Monaco it was Théo Pourchaire, and then last time out in Baku it was Liam Lawson. So we've had 3 different pole sitters, Tom. It is so difficult to call who is going to get this 4th pole position of the season. And all the 3 that we've just heard from, Dan Ticktum, Oscar Piastri and Guan Yu Zhou, all contenders right now. As we look at the timing sheet, Piastri, Ticktum, Drugovich, Schwartzman, Fitz, I mean the list is endless. We can add Lundgaard in there, Joe, Drubler. There is such a fantastic field of drivers in F2 this year.
That's why I said making predictions is bold at the start of the session.
And yet I still asked you.
From a pundit's perspective, I'm only selling myself short down the lake there, but Piastri, that is a monster lap. I mean, the difference between him and the rest of the field is quite something. And I know that the other drivers, yes, they're in it, but they will be looking at that thinking, crikey, where is 0.6 of a second?
Is it worth going out now? Do you think any drivers are going to run in the gap, as we call it, in F2?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen drivers run in the gap before. It can work. The biggest challenge is when you do go off sequence, you don't catch the tail of the snake, so to speak, in terms of when you're on a fly, you don't want to be catching cars on the build lap.
And it's a long lap here, I guess.
Yeah, it's a long lap, so that's the challenge. That's the only comment I'll make. And you'll probably see drivers actually being a bit more conventional and staying in formation and making space for themselves. As long as they've got about 2 seconds or so, that they won't have too much of an issue in terms of the dirty air.
And of course, we've seen in the past that the likes of sort of Monza, the traffic around the Parabolica can cause havoc in qualifying, but I don't think we're going to see that here at Silverstone. Looking there at Felipe Drugovich, currently in P3, the Brazilian driver doing a fantastic job in the UNI Virtuosi car. And we've just seen scenes of the fans there. Sometimes, when there's a support series, fans go off and get some refreshments, have a little wander around, but no, the fans have waited long enough. They want to be here for F2 and F1, and of course we've got W Series as well this weekend, but they're not going anywhere, the fans. They are loving the entertainment of F2. It is always brilliant watching F2 because I think it is some of the best entertainment in motorsport.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and we see that narrative played out across social media as well. This is a one-make championship. All the cars are the same, the engines are the same. The only thing that's different is the nut behind the wheel, so to speak, and that's the driver, and the driver does make a big difference. Okay, there is a difference in terms of the spectrum of budget available to the teams, and okay, certain teams have been more dominant over the years, but you really do bring a huge amount as the driver, and as long as you're in one of the top handful of teams, you stand a real chance of performing, and that's what we've seen, especially with this new race weekend format. 7 different winners in 12 races.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic season already. Just looking at the order at the moment, Guan Yu Zhou a little further down than you might think, but even coming into the season, he was unsure about how to approach qualifying. Do you want to qualify on pole and therefore take pole for the feature race, or do you want to qualify P10 and therefore be on pole for sprint race 1? It's a tricky one to get right. It's a tricky one to decide how to approach, but right now Guan Yu Zhou, I would have thought, wants to be a little further up the order to give him a fighting chance of being on pole for the feature race, because that's where the most points are handed out.
So in the break, you can get in touch on Twitter at Rosanna Tennant, at Tom Gamel. We'll try and get any questions answered for you. Heidi says, I know I've been living under a rock. Why isn't Alex commentating? Well, Alex Brundle, who's normally here, is on World Endurance duty this weekend. He's racing in Monza and then...
doing the day job.
And then the other Alex is doing some Formula 1 commentary as well.
Exactly, it's all go. It is all go because it's the British Grand Prix weekend, which is normally a magnet to everything else going on as well. So we're lucky now because we're getting F2 drivers out on track. We've had the gap, we've gotten through it, we're ready for that second bite of the cherry. Currently, Oscar Piastri, fastest of all, ahead of Dan Ticktum and Drugovich. So that's your top 3 as things stand. But with 12 minutes left on the clock, as we know, things can change. Just a reminder, of course, of our driver standings. It's Guan Yu Zhou leading the standings ahead of Piastri. So this is critical for the championship. Piastri at the moment putting himself in the best possible position to jump Guan Yu Zhou in the standings. It's just 5 points between those 2 drivers. There we go, Christian Lundgaard in your screen right now, 13th in the Drivers' Championship with just 18 points, and yet perhaps you think he might be a little higher up the order. ART, as Tom mentioned earlier, struggling a little bit for balance, but they had a chance between practice and qualifying, so perhaps they've made a few adjustments and perhaps the car's a little bit more to their liking. So they're absolutely flying out onto track now. Little traffic jam potentially. Dan Ticktum then